Well, one good way to get customers back on the road is to get them back in the air. And we're going to find out from our next speaker what he and his team are doing to make flights easier for consumers, because it is a very critical part of the travel journey. So I'm very pleased to have with us Mathias Hedlund, who's CEO of the Etraveli Group. Mathias, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I hear you're in Italy on vacation.
That's correct, but it's quite busy work-wise still, though.
What? You're not taking some time out? You're still working on the dirty and cumbersome job of fixing flights, because that's what I heard you say about flights.
There's not such a good time as now to actually do the work. From every crisis comes opportunities, you know.
Yeah, certainly we've been hearing that this is a good time to fix things. But let's cast back to December 2019, where we last met. I believe it was in Florida, and you as CEO, you just completed a 5-year turnaround of the company, and you just signed a major partnership with Booking.com. So really, the business was very much on a high when kind of travel crashed. So how have you weathered the storm?
Well, we suffered like everybody else, right? But we were also fortunate. We had a very strong balance sheet, so we didn't need to take on more debt. We didn't need any capital injection or use any credit lines. So instead, we used the crisis to work even harder and trying to take market share and thereby benefit when we are now starting to see the recovery. So yes, it was tough, but we invested during the crisis. We are more people within IT today than we were before the crisis, and we actually sell more now than we did before the crisis, although there is still a lot of recovery to come.
Right, but you are seeing really a healthy recovery in Europe right now? I mean, you said that your bookings were now surpassed 2019 levels in terms of orders, right?
That's true, and our main markets are Europe and North America, and those are two continents that are in the early stages of recovery compared to other continents. So yes, we are actually on index 110 compared to 2019, but the profitability is slightly lower. It's just below 100%, and the reason for that is that it's a lot of short-haul flights. So the long-haul flights have not started to come yet, but that will eventually come as well.
Right. So in a Focus Wire interview, which is one of our sister publications, you said, and I quote you say, "I constantly watch consumer behavior when it comes to ease of booking and price sensitivity, the two most important factors when buying flights." How has customer behavior changed as a result of COVID?
Well, first, of course, people have been wary about all the cancellations and will I get in the air, will I get my refunds? So there is a lot of more need for security, flexibility products. So just like anyone else, we have been able to, or need, sort of forced to focus on those and put that in front of the consumers. Another thing is that consumers are not as price sensitive at this moment, because the ones that really want to travel, they are so keen to travel that their price sensitivity is slightly less. That's something we believe will come back though when things normalize more. But those are two things that you can see right here, right now.
Right. Actually, just now, Greg from Expedia Group presented results of a survey that basically said that, the number one factor was the ability to get a full refund. That consumers wanted that. And actually price was number 3 now, on the list for now, for travel for now, which kind of fits in with what you're saying. You've also basically been quite honest about admitting that we in travel really cannot be proud of the consumer booking experience for flights, right? Because it is so complicated for the consumer. And that's what your job is. Your job is try and fix flights so that it's easier for the customer. So, and you've talked about the dirty and cumbersome things that you've had to do. So tell us about the things that you've had to do to ensure that consumers still have the most content options and then the most competitive pricing at the same level.
Yeah, so to sell a point-to-point flight with one single airline or airlines that partner with each other is relatively simple. But to combine airlines, combine them from different content system, getting all the ancillary rights, and thereby creating itineraries that doesn't are ready available, and also be able to really get the best price for the consumers, and making sure that it's as easy to book those flights as it is to book a point-to-point flight. That's really our what we're fighting to do, and where we put all our resources, and thereby we're able to offer more flight options than our competitors, and we're also able to offer them at a better price in many cases, and therefore we are the number one player in the meta channel across the world, and the number one seller in Skyscanner, etc. And of course that is going down to the mine and really work with the tech system and all the partner relationships, and really doing that cumbersome work in the back end in order for it to look simple in the front end.
Is it getting more complicated?
It is. It is getting more complicated every year, I would say. So to contrary what you might think with all the development of NDC, NDC is not the same thing for each and every airlines. They adapt it in a very different way. And this actually benefit the larger players and the ones with more tech capabilities. So I always tell to my team that within Etraveli Group, we actually embrace complexity. That's a chance for us to differentiate. It's a chance for us to gain market share. And therefore, I'm very optimistic about the future, because despite these efforts to simplify for the intermediaries and for the customers, it is actually becoming more and more complex, and people like us are more required than ever.
Yeah, I mean, one of the interesting trends I've seen in online travel definitely during this period is, companies sort of taking different bets on the future, right? And saying, this is what I want to be when it comes out. And one of your decisions that you made as part of the 5-year turnaround was really to get away from being a classic OTA and to become like a fixer, to power global powerhouses like Booking.com, right? And I asked you then, whether that risk was, whether that strategy was a risk. And I remember you telling me, like, you didn't have a choice. It was either that or slow death, like Thomas Cook. But clearly that risk has paid off. So talk to us about the partnership with Booking.com that you've got, and how you see that helping you to power other OTAs.
Okay. So first, there are of course different ways to succeed, and we had to choose the way to succeed in our case, and building on our capabilities and seeing the opportunities in the market. There are of course other ways to succeed as well, but we have found our way to grow fast and at high profitability. With Booking, we work very close with the team at Booking. It's a very good partnership. It expands every week, actually. It's been very busy now over summers as well with launching new markets, new features. So it's a very tight cooperation where Booking.com is building on their connected trip, and flight is what they call an anchor product for the connected trip, and it's a very important piece for them, and they invest and they're becoming better and better in what they're doing, and we try to support them with the back end. They're building the front end, and we do the things in the back end, and I think Booking.com has a very good opportunity to become a very large player within flights and together with us, and it's going to be very interesting to see the growth within this area in the future.
So is your ambition to eventually power all the global travel brands, including Google Flights, which surely must be the biggest non-OTA there is?
Yeah, Google Flights is an important partner already today for us, and I think they can have a stronger footprint within flights than what they have right now, and we have a good partnership with them, and I hope to support them in their ambitions going further. But there are many other players. It's been very evident now during the crisis as well that many players want to provide flights, but realize that it is so complex in order to be competitive, and that's where we fit into the picture. So yes, I see us powering a lot of different players. It's going to be very few of us that are capable to be globally competitive.
Right. So definitely consolidation is in the path ahead, right? And so are you considering further acquisitions? Because you acquired TripStack quite a couple of years ago. Are you considering some acquisitions now to power you further ahead?
We always look at acquisitions, and during this crisis, it's been quite a lot of stressed assets for sale. Nothing that have whet our appetite, though. We have been working harder actually on partnerships and trying to build those strategic partnerships, and hope that we will be able to launch a few of those in not so distant future. We see that we actually have the capabilities and the organic capabilities to develop further, even in continents like Asia. But it takes some time, though, and for a company like us, we have to prioritize as well, and we prioritize in certain markets right now, and others have to wait a bit.
So your priorities are Europe and the US right now, and Asia is pretty much secondary, or the Middle East?
So both yes and no. Our sales are primarily coming from Europe and Europe and North America right now. Europe is our largest continent. The US is our largest single country. But we are actually a bit under the radar, selling in many markets in Asia as well. And we are competitive in many of these markets, but we don't have the right distribution yet, or we might lack a single component like payments being good enough. So we are investing. Currently we're investing, for example, in Korea and in Saudi Arabia. And there are a number of other Asian markets that are sort of in the roadmap within the next 12 months to invest further in. So yes, we'll definitely, I say that we are already a valid player in APAC with specific capabilities, like our virtual interlining, for example, which is an airline-friendly virtual interlining, where we discuss with the airlines how we can, together with them, sell virtual interlining in the best way. And those capabilities are already there for Asia as well. It's more for us to really put in the efforts to enter the market and make those connections.
Right. Speaking about Korea, I'm sure you've read the news about Yeoh, which has raised $1.7 billion. And their aim is to basically build Yeoh Cloud, which is getting away from a consumer super app, right, and to build a global meta platform, that includes flights, but also attractions and rail and car. So it seems to be, a good trend. It seems to be pointing the trend towards the future. Now, talking about payments, right, you were COO of Klarna, which is Sweden's largest payments company. And so that kind of puts you ahead, in terms of trying to crack the payments pain point, which is what a lot of OTAs are trying to do. And Booking Holdings, for example, saying that they are setting up a separate fintech division now too, So how are you cracking this particular nugget about payments in travel, which is way, way complicated?
You're absolutely right. Payments within travel is incredibly important and also complicated. I've actually put one of my absolute best team members into the fields of payments. That's how important we deem it to be. And we have a sizable department for payments with a lot of experts. And this is both in supplier payments and in consumer payments. And I think we are in a very advanced position there compared to others, but still with a lot of leadway to go. We look upon the initiatives from Booking Holdings there and others with great interest, and we happily cooperate and support where there is an interest to do so. But it cannot be understated. Payments within travel, super important, both for the customer experience, but for conversion, for unit economics. It is very, very.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, what do you think of the valuation for Yeoh? $1.7 billion, to build a global meta platform. And it seems to me like, investors, especially public markets, right, they discount companies with high air exposure versus hotel exposure, right? So do you have significant accommodation revenue, or is it just flights for you? Is it mainly flights?
Yeah, so we're mainly flights, and that's exactly how it should be for us. So as confident we are within our capabilities in flights, as humble we are when it comes to our capabilities in other areas, and as humble we are in looking at all the other really good companies out there. You mentioned Booking, you have Expedia, you have others that are very good in hotels, and we wouldn't be able to compete on a global scale with them. And also we we attract most of our traffic from meta channels or partners like Booking, etc. So that means that the propensity to buy accommodation from us when consumers are coming in with that intent is rather low. So we sort of have accepted our position and really trying to go deeper into that position rather than going broader. We will add, of course, trains and things like that because it's very close to, and you want to combine that in virtual interlining, etc. I'm not too worried about valuations because if you have a really strong growth and have a high profitability, you will be valued by the public market or investors. We have proven that before in our previous rounds when we have sort of exited and sold the company. So you have to do what you can do with what you are, and yes, there are some incredible valuations out there for certain type of companies and especially within payments and etc. But that's not us. We're trying to be the absolute best that we can be in our segment of the market.
Yes,
but doing so globally.
I guess sticking to what you know, but it's interesting the valuations that we're seeing in the US, with travel companies now sort of being worth 30% more than sort of even pre-COVID. Specific question, have you considered a Spec merger as at all? Because, Spec seems to be a really hot topic right now in Asia.
So we are owned by CVC. It's the largest private equity in Europe. So eventually we will exit again. That can be a sale to someone strategic within the industry. It can be to another financial investor. It can be a listing. And within the listing option, of course, SPAC is an alternative, but I cannot comment on the attractiveness of those different tracks. But I think we see the same, that we expect also to be higher valued than before the crisis in our potential exit in the end, right? Because we have taken a lot of market share, and if you look ahead, what we should be able to do if the market recovers, it would merit a high valuation.
Okay, to the winner, the spoils. So I want to ask you one last question because you're based in Sweden, and I wanted to ask you, what is it like trying to build a global flight platform in a country that invented the term flight shaming? I'm not going to say it in Swedish, And I want to share a quote by Bill McKibben here, which I want to share it with the audience so that they read it. And so how do you think we in travel can respond to this argument? Because, flight shaming is real in your part of the world.
So yes, flight shaming is very much real. I think it's important first to know that being a back-end provider like we are, we're not a famous consumer brand, and hence you're not in the forefront of that debate. It's mostly the airlines and the consumer brands. Having said that, we take it very seriously because we're all here for the long term and trying to provide a sustainable industry for generations to come. We do our thing by supporting better fuels. We have an initiative we're part of in the Netherlands that's called Board Now to build up plants for producing sustainable fuel. The long-term solution, though, is of course something more electric and so on. And I really hope we can crack that together. I always try to put things on the table. I always try to be very upfront about how things are and putting things in perspective. And I think that's important as well. Being very honest and serious about it, but at the same time putting things in perspective and how much flight is contributing to emissions in comparison to other things, and of course it has got a lot of attention, and therefore you always have to take it very seriously. We were one of the first, I think it's almost 10 years ago now, we started to sort based on itineraries based on emissions. You see some bigger brands doing that now recently, but that was an early move to show that consumers should have the ability to select the options. I heard a previous speaker here talking about direct flights or flying economy, etc. Right? So we sorted that with algorithms for the last 10 years. The sad thing is, though, that consumers are not very much going for that. They are going for price and other attributes. So there's very little pickup.
So there's kind of a divide between like what they would like versus what they actually do, but maybe that gap is going to be closing much more now, perhaps, and we're seeing a lot of startups now come up to solve this problem, which you did 10 years ago, which is kind of, measuring flight emissions and which flight would be the most friendly in terms of what you should take. So interesting. So I'm going to wrap up with rapid fire. I don't want to interrupt your holiday any more than necessary. What is the greatest shift to come in flights in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think LCCs will continue to grow on the expense of full service carriers, and full service carriers will start to look more and more like LCCs.
Okay.
And I think that's a big shift.
Okay, so beyond flights, what's the greatest shift to come in travel in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, it's of course like everybody else have noticed before, right? That it's the combination of business and leisure, and the pure business trips might decrease, but you're gonna make leisure trips where you actually prolong them and work business wise, and you're still gonna spend money on travel, but it's gonna look a bit different, and that will have big implications for especially airlines and the business travel segment. But it won't, in my mind, I have a very hard time to see that unless the pandemic takes very different turns and we're not coming out of it as we now probably think. I think travel is going to come back and be strong.
Right. Well, you're certainly seeing it in Europe, right? What's the most cumbersome thing that you'd like to fix in flights? One thing.
I still think that we all should be a bit ashamed that it's so difficult to book, and the whole economics about flights makes us and others create booking paths that are not consumer friendly, to be frank. Because if you make them too consumer friendly, you cannot compete on price. And that is it's actually quite interesting to see all the newcomers coming into the industry and think they can solve it, and then having learned more, they realize how complex it is. But I do think we can go further, and I also think I think all of us have learned a lot during this crisis, that we have way too little automations in the refund area, and to manage all these changes and cancellations, it goes all the way from airlines to GDSs to agents. It's not automated enough, and thereby not a good consumer experience.
Well, hopefully we'll move into the next era where it does become more customer friendly to book flights. Thank you, Mathias, and enjoy your holiday in Italy. All right, we'll see you some other time. Thank you.
Yes, longing to come to Asia. Thank you, Siew.
Thank you. All right.